What's up, control freaks? Welcome back to the 50th episode of the Control Freak podcast. Tonight, I have on a very special guest, a person who just did amazingly at both NRG tournaments this weekend. He ran the gauntlet. He took down both the Modern Showdown and the Pioneer trial. None other than Stephen Dykman. Stephen,
Yep. No, you're good, man. How's it going?
it is going well. It is going well. How are you?
Good, man. Still pretty tired. Didn't get
Yeah.
home this morning until like 2:30 a.m. and then had some errands I needed to run today. So Julie and I share a card or share a car. So I had to take her into work. So I had to be up at like 6. So I'm running on like 3.5 hours of sleep. I did take a little nap, but
Nice.
oh boy, I
You
am
got a little
I
power
am
nap in there?
still feeling the effects of the weekend. I'll tell you what, but yeah, it was
Absolutely.
a really exciting one to say the least.
Absolutely. It was a insane accomplishment to take down. It's hard enough to take down one tournament. Like you have to play very well, get lucky, have
Oh
good
yeah,
matchups,
yep,
not be tired, hydrate, eat
yep,
well, sleep well, but to take them 2 down and back to back, first time in NRG series history, so that's a little feather in your cap.
yeah.
Um, so
It's
before we
nice.
get started though, in full, let me go through the housekeeping stuff real quick.
Cool.
First off, first time in a long time. Thanks. If you're listening to this on the podcast apps, I appreciate you. If you're watching live on twitch.tv/lessalex, thanks for hanging out. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you want to help support the podcast directly, head on over to patreon.com/lessalex. Check that out. There's some perks over there and some fun things if you enjoy the content and want to give me some dollar bucks every month to help the content. And as a reminder, the podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the other podcast apps you could ever think of. And make sure to head on over, give me a 5-star review. It really, really does help out. And you can give those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and now Spotify. So shout out to Spotify for finally getting reviews, I guess, because that's such a novel thing. All right. Um, okay, so this weekend you absolutely dominated. So let's start with Saturday. Obviously, that was the Modern Showdown. You have
Yes.
60 points. I was looking at the leaderboard. You have 60 freaking points. Everybody else has
Yeah, I
like
mean
20.
it's just unbelievable. Funny thing to do with the points too. So people who are watching the event won't know this, but I actually conceded in the standard finals and gave my opponent the invite because I already have the invite like 2 times over for Dallas. I was already invited in the modern one. It was unfortunate that there's no way for me to pass that to Maiko in that spot, but there's just not.
Yeah.
Um, so that sucks. That's the way it was. Sarah, fortunately, already qualified just by being in the finals of that one.
STL
But
local too. STL
yeah,
local.
yeah, that's
Shout out to
absolutely
Sarah.
awesome. And she played really well in that match for the most part. I know she was debating the turn 4 not playing the Murktide,
Yeah, I
and I
saw
had
that
some
on
people
Twitter.
talking to me about how she should have played the Murktide there, and I agree she probably should have made me have the dispute, but I totally respect like being afraid to dispute there because it is bad for her if I do have the dispute.
Yeah.
I mean, I played game 1 around counterspell like the entire game for the most part, even though she never had it. But I mean, she kept a 7. Like keeping a 7, knowing the matchup. Like I'm gonna assume she has a counter spell or a spell pierce in her hand, and but at the same time, she knows I'm gonna do that. So it's like a little bit of a mind game there, right? Like she knows
Yeah.
that if she confidently keeps a 7, then I'm probably gonna be inclined to believe she has a counter spell. But anyway, um,
Yeah.
yeah, it
And
was.
it's so easy
Oh, go ahead.
to analysis paralysis at that point.
It
Like
is, yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's always when you go back in a match and you're looking for a mistake, it's
you're gonna find
sometimes
it,
you
right?
convince yourself that
Yeah.
things are mistakes when maybe they weren't necessarily. Like, in
Absolutely.
hindsight, you lost, and that you could have done things differently that probably would have led to you winning. But were they, 100% right? And there are very few There are few. I won't say few, but there are not always like 100% right and wrong decisions in Magic.
Yeah.
Obviously, like sometimes it's just like percentage based stuff. Um,
Yep.
but anyway, I do agree that she probably should have played the Murktide, in hindsight from both sides. But in the moment, it's so tough. You're under a lot of pressure too. Like,
Oh yeah. The bright
it's a
lights.
huge pressure moment for both of us. Um,
I
but
think
either
you
way,
guys. I heard you guys split, right? So
we
there
did.
wasn't,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you
yeah.
still had the
Tons of cash. We
invite.
got like, I think it
Yeah.
was 1300. I mean, just like
Yeah.
huge purse for that event. So
That is awesome.
everyone leaves at least somewhat happy, right? The tournament,
Absolutely.
you're making a killing on that event, so that's really nice. But anyway, all this started talking about those invites. Was unfortunate that I could not pass the one
Right.
to Maiko. Just kind of how it works. Um, but anyway, we were talking about the energy points was what led into all this, and I
Yeah.
was telling Norm that he basically he said there was more to play for than just the invite. There was also energy points, and I just go, I don't need more of those. We've
Right.
had
You're
enough of
good.
those. So he just goes, "Oh, come on, man! You're gonna regret that when it comes down to the MVP race." And maybe I will, but at the end of the day, like if I get MVP, whatever. If I don't get
I mean, at
MVP,
this point, you're
whatever.
just gonna win every NRG ever,
Well,
anyway.
yeah,
So like,
I
whatever.
mean, yeah, but it's also like MVP doesn't really. I don't think that really gets me
I don't
anything
think.
other than just
Yeah.
saying I was
Clout.
MVP,
It's the Twitter
which is
clout, man.
yeah, it's clout. I mean, like, I'm not the biggest like clout dude. That's not why I play the game. That's not why I love
Right.
Magic. I'm always just trying to play my best and have my best results that I can. And I just
Right.
I just genuinely love the game, and the clout comes with it. But I'm not really out there chasing clout a ton, which isn't always the best quality considering I'm on a team and I stream and all that, and we can plug that later. But
Yeah.
um, it's at the end of the day, the MVP is certainly not like my goals, right? And we'll I know that's a topic we'll get into later here too. But um,
Absolutely.
anyway, yeah.
So
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 he
so
he got the
kind of
invite.
kind of take us through the modern showdown. Maybe not match for match, but if there are any matches that you found interesting or difficult or specific, turns maybe or play patterns or instances that you thought the viewers might gain value from, because I'm sure over that tournament. I mean, you said it in. I thought your day two victory speech was very telling. Essentially, what I got out of it, and I'm not quoting you or anything, but you essentially said you played Rhinos because you knew how to play it, and you just kind of played as good as you could, and you basically thought you were gonna basically lose every match, but you ended up winning almost every match.
Top
So
top eight was unbelievable. I mean, the quarterfinals. Um, I mean, you can like go back and watch that, but like game two, we both mulled 5. Game one, I squeak out a pretty close game. My opponent's
and what
hand
was
was not
this
that good.
against? What deck?
Oh, it was against the breach deck, one of the breach decks.
Hmm.
Was it Jeskai Breach? It might have been. I think it's Jeskai Breach. She had fairies in there. I haven't played a ton of modern lately either. So some of these, it's a breach deck. I know there are like
Yeah.
different flavors of breach, but we'll just say Jeskai Breach. He had Teferi. He had 2 prismatic ending out of the board. He had 2
Was
wear
that
tear out of the board.
against Michael?
Yes, I believe that is correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And shout out to him, by the way. He actually messaged me and congratulated me on Twitter and said it was
Oh,
a
nice.
pleasure playing. So that was really really cool to
Heck
have
yeah.
that. But in any case, yeah, game one I like squeak it out. His draw wasn't like particularly impressive. Mine was good, and I win the game. And then game two we both mulled to 5.
Yeah.
And
You're saying.
there are a couple critical things that happen in game two. The first one is I miss my third land, and then because I'm missing my third land, I end up misevaluating a breach. I believe I should have just let a breach resolve and let him bauble. I miscounted the cards in yard. He could only get one card off the bauble, not two. I thought he'd be able to do it twice, and that was a little too much
Yeah.
value, I thought. But people after the match were telling me, hey, he only had five cards, which is not enough to do it twice. And I'm like, oh, you're right. So I shouldn't have enduranced in that spot, but I think I missed my third land on turn 4, and I might have finally drawn it on turn 5. But the missed
Yeah.
land drops were really killer there, and I ended up falling behind. He ends up taking over, I believe, with Ledger Shredder, and then gets it to Fairy down. It's a disaster. I get run
Yeah. I mean,
over
the
in game.
wheels started falling off
Yeah,
after that.
I get crushed. I mean, it's not a close game, not really a memorable game at all. It's me just like playing from behind and praying that I can do anything. But he has a drain. He has just like all the hate pieces in play. He has an EE. He has a Draineth Magistrate. I just like can't do anything. It's disgusting. So I just get
Commander Legend, Dranith
oh yeah.
Magistrate,
I mean I get
Commander
rocked.
All-Star.
Yeah, just completely rocked. I mean, my deck just doesn't.
Yeah.
I just don't function.
Right.
So we go to game 3. I keep a 7 that has 2 lands, and I'm just praying that we can hit a land drop because I believe I had like double cascade spell. I had a good hand. It was a strong hand. I think it might have had. I think I had force negation as well, so I could like deal
Oh
it to
wow.
fairy. So I was very happy with this hand. Keep it. Missed my third land drop, and I'm just like, oh my god, not
Here we
again.
go
Please.
again.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
again, please, not like this, right? And basically, the key point of this game is I fall way behind again, but I'm in a position where I at least have an endurance as a 3/4 in play. My opponent has a Ledger Shredder for a while. I don't remember a ton else. They like go through at least one Urza Saga. I forget exactly when, but the turning point of this game is my opponent plays a second Ledger Shredder. I flash in a Brazen Borrower, and I attack with Endurance and the Brazen Borrower with him at 13 life, and he chooses to trade the second Ledger Shredder with the Brazen Borrower. I
Mm,
think if he does not block in that position, I'm going to lose the game. But because he gives up that second Ledger Shredder,
right.
it ends up leading to a sequence of things. I end up popping a Fiery Islet, I believe, into a lethal Fire Ice on a board where I'm like certainly going to die if he untaps. Which is like what I was playing too. I put myself in a position where I could like top deck the Fire
Absolutely.
Ice. I did, and so my tournament continued. But an insanely stressful game. I had to play to outs. I was way behind, and I was probably like at one point in that game, I would guess I was probably sub 5%, like all
Wow.
things considered. So I it just like way behind, thought I was going to lose, couldn't believe I won. Had people come up to me after the match and the next day as well and be like, how did you win? Like I stopped
You're a
watching when you missed
master.
your
How'd you
third
do it?
land. And
Yeah.
I say I don't I don't know. I thought I was going to lose too. It's so that was pretty insane. And then the semis, I play against Oliver Tomiko. For those who don't
Very
follow
good.
Magic,
Yeah.
if you follow Magic, Tomiko is
Absolutely.
insanely good. I've played Tomiko, I think, once before in my entire life. It was when Tomiko was quite young, I believe 16, 17, maybe even younger than that at the time. Tomiko is like a prodigy. This has always been really good. Very, very
Yep.
good, just young player. Was super good at Yu-Gi-Oh! Too, I think.
Mm.
But anyway, played against him once before, lost. He was on Infect at the time. I was on Burn, old school modern, the old days
Oh
when
yeah.
Infect was still playable.
The Wild
Uh,
West.
yep, the Wild West. But Tomiko is not going to make anything free. Tomiko is not going to let me miss land drops and win
Yeah.
games. So I knew going into it that hopefully I wouldn't run like that again because if I did, I was I was probably screwed.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
game 1 is really close. I actually make a mistake on turn 4. I fetch Shock because I played the wrong fetch land. I should have played a different fetch land for my hand. I had a Wooded Foothills and a Scalding Tarn. I played a Scalding Tarn, which could not fetch the basic forest. I should have
Oof.
played the Wooded Foothills to fetch the basic forest because the end of this game basically revolves me being at 1 life and being dead to a Fire Ice off the top. Unfortunately, Tomiko never draws it. But had I fetched better, I could have been at 3 and not even been dead to the Fire Ice.
Not even have to worry about
But
it.
I
Yeah.
noticed this on turn 4, so I'm like, I have it the whole game. I'm just trying to have him gather myself, be like, okay, we can't think about that mistake. We gotta play. But it's gonna suck if I lose to this because I deserve it type of deal. But
Right.
fortunately, Tamiko did not draw the fire ice, and I was able to claw out of game one. Game one was super super tight. I think honestly, Tamiko, I think is actually favored into me. I know Doomwake and I think Mason Clark were the two that were commentating the modern one, and I think I can't remember if Mason ever said, but Doomwake was of the opinion that I was favored versus Tamiko, and I don't know that that's the case. I think Dispute is really good in the mirror, and I think Murktide is also really good in the mirror. Was very
Yeah.
worried about both those cards, but fortunately, I had timely Brazen Borrowers to stall the Murktide, and was able to, like I said, just claw out game one. Game two, Tamiko almost to five, but has the stone cold nuts. I mean, just goes and Tamiko said the same thing. Tamiko goes land, 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 Shardless Agent, Rhinos, three cards in hand. I play a Violent Outburst, and Tamiko had the Force Negation. So
Oof.
Tamiko's got 10 power in play. I did have Fury, so I Fury, get rid of one of the 4/4s. I'm at
Yeah.
17 from how my fetches lined up. And a key thing to remember in this game is that I suspended a Crashing Footfalls on turn one, which is about to come up on turn four. So Tamiko has a 4/4 and the Shardless Agent at play. I'm at 17. Tamiko draws, has two cards, attacks me, casts Violent Outburst. So I go from 17 and I take 8, I go to 9. And Tamiko now has 3 Rhinos and the Shardless Agent. I have nothing in my hand. I am
Right.
just assuming I've lost this game. I don't have any Cascader. I have a Brazen Borrower, which bounces a Rhino, and I still take 10 and I lose. So I'm at this point. I think honestly in this game I was probably like probably sub 5%, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse. But
Right.
I was thinking I was dead. So I untap, I draw, and it's a Shardless Agent. And after I draw, I realize I didn't remove a counter for my Crashing Footfalls
Oh
because
no.
mentally I was already kind of like, okay, we're going to game three. But
Right.
Shardless Agent was like a perfect top deck. So this is a really good example of like never scoop and never,
Oh yeah.
always try and keep your focus in a game, because I definitely lost it in that moment, just kind of thinking I'd
Well,
lost. But
yeah, and also I think that one thing I know I've done in the past and I've gotten better at it is just because you misplay, don't misplay into another misplay,
yeah,
right?
you can, yeah, exactly. Like I said, I noticed my mistake in game one. I noticed this mistake as well. But I fortunately am able to recover from them and still win the game. I don't tilt off
Yeah.
and spew all over the place and do a bunch
Right.
of bad stuff.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it is really important to at the end of the day, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes in this
Yeah.
game, no matter who they are. I've watched Brad Nelson punt against me personally, and I mean, it just happens.
Yeah.
The best of the best make mistakes in this game. It's a really complex game. There's a lot going on.
Oh yeah.
Um, all of us are pretty tired. We woke up at
Yeah, I was gonna
8:30 in the
say,
morning.
especially after like 9 hours of Magic or
Yeah, I
whatever
mean,
it
we
was at
we had
that
a
point.
we had a very long day one. We woke up early. I don't know about other players, but I didn't sleep amazing. I was nervous, just like I assume a lot of other players are in that spot.
Yeah.
But you know, uh, yeah. So I noticed the mistake, but I just had to try and recover. And I Shardless Agent. I'm able to. I think Tamiko fire ices the next turn, taps a Rhino, attacks me. I block Rhino and Shardless. I take 8. I go to 1. Next turn, I draw another Shardless Agent. So just like runner, perfects off the top.
Nice.
Um, and then I remembered my suspend triggers from now on. And then the game is really complex and interesting, but I'm able to claw my way out and win that one. So um, this match, like, although I was never behind a game, all the games were both of them came down to me at one life. Both games were me having to win the game from one life, and game two in particular was just like a lot of really complicated like combat math of how many
Yeah.
rhinos to send in, what am I willing to be dead to, how can I not die to like X card or whatever, and
Right.
at the end of the day, fire ice was always going to be lethal, so I had to like in both games, I had to like be aggressive, right? Because the more draw steps I give to Maiko, the
Yeah.
more likely it is I lose. I'm just dead to one card. So, I had to turn on the Jets as soon as possible once I'm at one life in both those games. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, so both those games super close. I'm able to pull them out, and then the finals match against Sarah. Game
Oh
one
yeah.
was pretty sweet. I think we play until about turn 8 or 9 of this game, but it's basically me just being really patient with a violent outburst for most of the game. Her repping counterspell, not having counterspell, eventually finds counterspell, but I'm able to put her in a spot where she is enticed into counterspelling a dead gone,
Mm,
which did not actually matter that much for me. I wanted her to counter it because her countering the dead gone made her just dead to the fury that I was about to cast and clone with reflection of Kiki Jiki, which had flipped. She's at 10. My board state is Rhino Reflection. I have 6 mana. She bites on the counter spell, and then I go
and then
Fury.
you
Try
just
to clone it. Do you have Unholy Heater Bolt? She does not. She
yeah.
dies. So that's how game one goes. Game two, I just get rocked by Ledger Shredder. I mean, Ledger. So let's backtrack a little bit before we go talk more about game two. So in the Swiss, my only loss, and in fact, my first game loss of the day came in round 4 against Murktide in game two. And in that match as well, Ledger Shredder just like dominated me. I mean, in game 2 and 3, Shredder was just like completely the difference. Um, so I this is like going to be the third time, and remember in top 8 as well, I was also getting clowned by Ledger Shredder. So basically, all my
Yeah.
game losses in this tournament have felt like I've been losing the Ledger
Just the
Shredder
ledger
card.
shredder,
Just
man.
like
It'll
Ledger
get you.
Shredder is just crushing me. So after Sarah takes firm control of this game and ends up winning, going into game 3, I initially and my my sources that I was talking to that know a little bit more about modern than me were telling me you should cut Fury in the Murktide matchup. So I was cutting Fury.
Okay.
But after
N-
losing to Murktide or losing to Ledger Shredder game after game after game, I said, screw this. Fury's going to be in my deck because I just need a way to get that stupid thing off the table
Right.
so I don't just lose to that card because I'm sick of losing to that card. And if Sarah also believes that Fury is bad in the matchup, she may not play around it in game 3 and may set up a board that gets wrecked by
Just
Fury. Like,
wrecked. Yeah.
yeah. So I decide, okay, I cut the fire ices. No idea if that's right. But I cut the fire ices and I bring in all the Furies. And then game 3, there are a few critical spots. We talked about her critical decision on turn 4
Yeah.
a little bit earlier. We won't go more into detail on that. But basically, on turn 3 for me, I'm able to Fury kill a 2/4 Ledger Shredder. She did play around the Fury pretty well in this case because had she like discarded a land instead of a spell, now to be fair, her hand didn't even have land in it. Had she been land flooded, maybe she would have done it. But her hand was all spells at the time, I believe. She might have had one land, but she wanted her land drops. I can't quite remember. Her hand was like double EI, consider stuff like that. Maybe
Yeah.
she had double consider, double EI, pitch to consider to it. But anyway, I end up Furying the Ledger Shredder and then doing the Rhino thing. And then the following turn, I Murktide. And we get in this really interesting game where I'm able to put her under pressure. She finds an EE. She blows up the rhinos. We
Yeah.
get to a spot where there's like nothing in play other than like Murktide, um, and she's at 4. And then basically she decides the critical turn. She decides to EI instead of play the Murktide. The EI resolves. She plays EE. She blows up EE, blowing up the rhinos. Goes to 4 on the Murktide. I and then I play an endurance. So the endurance is a big deal here because it shuts off
Yeah.
Unholy Heat, and it also strands, I believe, 2 Murktides in her hand.
Oh.
Certainly one, but it eventually strands 2. But basically, she finds this really awesome line where she puts a Darcy into play, and then with no graveyard because I've just done the endurance thing. So I have an endurance and a 5/5 Murktide, and she's at 4. And she goes play Darcy, play EE,
Hmm.
bin something, a card type. Um, then
A
she
card with
goes
text.
then she goes, what was her name? Oh, then she goes cast Unholy Heat targeting your Murktide. She finally decides she just has to go for this Unholy Heat.
Yeah.
Um, and the Unholy Heat hits the other type she needs. So she might have played a fetch this land. She played a fetch land this turn too, I believe. That's how she gets the 4th card type. So she
Gotcha.
goes. So she fetches, has a land, plays the Darcy, plays the EE, bins a card type. She casts Unholy Heat. She hits the other type she needs, and then in response to the Unholy Heat, with it still on the stack, pops the EE to put the 4th card type in the yard to let the Unholy Heat have Delirium. And she also does all this second main, so she doesn't
Oh,
have to suicide her her Darcy. So I think she still had Darcy in play. She didn't actually need to cast it, but anyway, she does it all second main, so she doesn't have to attack. Which is
that's
a really
sick.
heads up play. But also just like the ability to manipulate to get Delirium there was like a really, really strong play.
Absolutely.
I was very impressed by it. I even said at the table, it's like a great play. Because I mean, it was nice. You don't
Absolutely.
run into players who find that stuff at every round. That's for sure. But
Just
anyway,
in the finals. Just in the finals.
yeah, exactly. Um, but anyway, my next turn, I draw Fiery Islet. I play Islet. I have Fable in hand, and I forget what my other card was. It wasn't really relevant at the time. I pop
Sure.
Fiery Islet. I hit the second Endurance. I play Well, first I attack her with my Endurance, and because she's at 4, she's in a really tough spot because if she doesn't block, she loses to just Violent Outburst or
Mm-hmm.
loses to a Fire Ice. So she decides to block, and then I Endurance her again, and then she ends up losing to the 2 Endurances. But yeah, that's kind of just a somewhat brief. I guess we went into pretty good detail there, but
Yeah.
kind of a little snippet into
The
my
top
my
8.
top 8 experience there. Um, and like you can probably tell they're just all like super close, very stressful games.
Yeah.
A lot of hands running through my hair, hoping I'm going to be able to win in a lot of games. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was fun, man. I mean, that was a heck of a tournament.
Yeah. But wait, there's more.
Oh yeah,
So yeah, as I said at the top of the show, you are the first player in NRG series history to have won back to back in the same weekend, a showdown and a trial. And now we focus on Pioneer, which is the format I play the most on
yep,
stream, and I'm admittedly I'm not very familiar with Modern anymore. I play it occasionally, but because Azorius Control has kind of taken a back seat in that format, I'm not as interested. Whereas Azorius Control is pretty strong in Pioneer.
yep.
So, let's take a look at let's talk about your Pioneer. I mean, you won both tournaments, man. This is crazy. Is
Yeah,
it like sinking? Has it sunk in yet? Or
yeah. I mean, like, I'm really happy I did it. Obviously, I got I ran really well. That's very obvious.
yeah,
I'm happy I played well. I I I'm happy I did it, but I've got a lot more I'm trying to do. So like
oh yeah,
I'm really happy I did it, but at the end of the day, like I'm not on the pro tour yet. I'm not, I've got
yep,
a lot of stuff that
a little bit more to
I still need to
grind.
do as a player. I'm going to San Diego on Saturday. I'm taking a little vacation with Julia, lined up nicely. She has spring break. She's a
Oh,
teacher, so
nice. That's
we're just taking a
convenient.
vacation, and then it's on to the next tournament. But
Absolutely.
that's that's kind of the life of a Magic player. It's certainly my life. Like I'm happy I did it. It's sweet, but I'm not going to bask in it because
Right.
that's not going to make me better. That's not going to help me accomplish my goals. So
Heck yeah.
it was sweet. It was a great weekend, but it's already just time to move on and play more standard for me.
I gotcha. So let's chat about this Rakdos mid-range deck and of course the tournament. Rakdos mid-range, I mean, I think it is safe to say it is, if not the best deck, it is uh, a close second.
Really hard to
Um,
argue that it's not. Yeah,
yeah.
it's if it's not the best, it's tied with something else, and I don't
Yeah,
know what that
right.
something else would
I
be.
don't know.
So
I don't either. When I think of this format and when I think of the best deck, this is the first deck that comes to mind. But
Yep.
yeah, I think you obviously had an insane run again. What was your record in Swiss
So
in the Pioneer?
one important thing to remember is
You got
because an NRG
two
has
buys?
yes, an NRG
Yeah,
has changed their policy. So 8 round events this year, they're doing all the rounds the first day. So anything less than 9 does not get any buys and doesn't have to play the morning of, which is nice to not have to play the morning of, but you
yeah.
don't get the buys. The buys are obviously insanely broken. Buys are
Oh yeah.
just cracked. I mean,
Well, how
they're
many rounds was the Pioneer tournament?
it was only
8?
8. It was only 8
So
rounds. So I 25% of my matches are just free wins, which is just like
yeah,
I just won a tournament. Like I don't, I'm not the guy in the room who needs, that I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of buys, so hopefully they will have more 8 rounders than 9 rounders. I get that. Yeah, I'm tired. I had to wake up early, so that's like a little bit of a disadvantage. But free wins
yeah,
are dumb, and I
yeah,
basically only had to like 4-1 a Moto League to
yeah.
top 8 the next one,
Jeez,
right?
when you
Which
put
is
it like that, it's like
yeah, it's
easy mode.
yeah, with what we just said is probably the best deck in Pioneer, and it is. I mean, there are some decks you want to dodge. There are some harder matchups, but
Yeah.
overall, I mean, the deck is just insane. And the thing about Rakdos is, it's kind of new age Jund, where
Oh yeah.
other than the enigmatic matchup, which is mathematically, if you look at like the RC data, was like a 30-70. And I think my build might be a little better than that because I have the
Against
4
what?
duresses. Just so many duresses helps, but it's still a bad matchup.
Versus Lotus or
Oh, sorry, not Lotus. Enigmatic
oh,
Fire
sure, sure.
is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
really bad
That
one.
that seems
Actually
like a
think
nightmare.
Lotus is a good matchup for Rakdos. I'm fine to run into it. Although it was my one loss, I did lose to Connor Mullally, but I also
Good
played
player
pretty
though.
poorly in game 2, which I said in my interview. I missequenced my turn 3 play. I played a second Blood Tithe Harvester when I was supposed to just play a Bank Buster because it would have been +1 damage. And he ended the game at 1 life, and that's not even the only mistake I made either. I also blooded away a Fable on like turn 5 that I should not have blooded away because I could have played Fable and then fired up Mutavault to then use the 2/2 and the Mutavault to crew Bankbuster, which
Mm,
would have allowed me to attack for 8 on a turn where he was at 7 rather than attack him for 6. So 2 mistakes in that game led to me losing. So that one was just like totally on me, nothing to do with the matchup. Nothing to do with how I drew or how he drew. Should have won that game 2, and then who knows what would have happened game 3. Him on the
right.
play's tough. He's a really good Lotus pilot. But 8 spells is big game
Oh
against
yeah.
Lotus. Big game, and 3 Lilianas is helpful as well in the Go Blank. So I'm really able to play the attack your resources game pretty well. I also have Pithing Needle for them. Just a lot of tools.
Right.
So I believe that matchup is favored for Rakdos, but I do think it's close, and I do think it's build dependent, and I also think it's a play draw is a huge deal in that matchup. It's not always a huge deal, but it is certainly big there.
Yeah. That makes sense.
um,
So if you want to talk through top 8 or again, it doesn't have to be top 8 necessarily, but
yeah,
any you already spoke about against fires and everything and a little bit about your one loss, but
yeah,
if you want to talk about either top 8 or just any key matchups, key moments, key
yeah.
plays.
So I
Yeah.
play against Greasefang in round 3, coming off those buys. I win that one 2-0. Was kind of funny actually. I was playing against uh, one of the PT builds, so like the Vessel of Nascency, the
Oh yeah.
Traverse, the which I believe is the better build, but I'm always going to default to the PT builds over everything else. I think
Right.
those guys are testing harder than everyone else in the
Oh
world,
yeah.
and they really they're not playing PTs to lose. They're
Right. They
going to
want to
play what they
win.
believe is truly the best possible deck. And so if they come up with specific builds, I'm going to default to those, which is why I started playing the Shota Rakdos deck. But it didn't take me long to realize that I preferred this build more than Ginger's build. For
Yeah.
a lot of reasons, I like the 26th land. I hate losing games to not hitting my land drops. Obviously,
As a
it was
control player, I feel you.
well, it's just like it's not completely free, but it's like it's pretty free in a
Pretty free.
Fable Blood Tithe Harvester, like 7 man, or I get how many man 6 man lands. You have 6 man lands. You have a ton of loot effects. Um, you have like good card advantage with like Bank Buster and stuff. Like, I don't like losing games to missing lands. So I've liked the 26th land. It's never felt too bad for me. Um, and playing extra lands can be good with Liliana's too, because if you flood out, you just pitch extra lands and maybe get real resources out of them is another thing as well.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, back to playing against the Greasefang deck. There's a really critical turn in game 2 where my opponent chooses to not traverse to go get Greasefang because they don't want to expose the Greasefang to Thoughtseize. They'd rather me, if I draw Thoughtseize traverse, because then they still have the Greasefang in their deck. So mathematically, that play makes sense if that's what you're playing around. The problem for my opponent is I boarded in 4 Duress. So I peel a Duress, I Duress traverse, he gets super punished for holding the traverse.
Yeah.
And after the game, he goes, "Didn't think you'd bring Duress in." I bring Duress in. I have all 4
Yeah.
against Greasefang. Their best card's Grizzly Salvage. I'm trying to rip that every game. I don't want
Yeah.
them to hardcast Asika's Chariot. I'm going to rip that games where I can. And there's sometimes where I just have to rip the Sky Sob too, because that card's a huge issue if it hits the board.
Yeah, that thing's
So
nuts.
so I want duress there. I also want to be able to duress cards like Liliana. If they have Thoughtseize, duress effects, I may want to rip them. You know, there are all sorts of spells that I would want to rip against that deck. Vessel is a
Oh
good
yeah.
hit. But anyway, so that was my first round. I already talked about round 4 losing to Connor. My next round I play against Greasefang again. I beat that one pretty handily. Nothing too crazy there. I just have like really nice draws, and he kind of had pretty bad ones. Honestly,
Mm.
his game 1 hand, I thought it was a weak one to Thoughtseize. I Thoughtseize him, and his hand just didn't kind of function after that.
Those are always good games for you.
Yeah, those are that's the power of Thoughtseize, and
Oh yeah.
that's one of the reasons that Rakdos is so good among many others. But um, yeah, so I win that one. My next round, I think, was the one of the more exciting matches I played on the weekend. It was certainly my most exciting standard match. I think I played against George. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Is it
I think I know who you're talking about.
Jabor? Jabor, maybe the
Yeah.
control players. I played him in top 4 of the last modern event that I played in. Um, and he was on blue white and I was on shadow, so kind of really similar matchup, honestly, how the cards are interacting and what's
Oh
happening.
yeah.
I'm playing hand 8 spells, he's playing counter spells and planeswalkers. I'm playing like nice threats, he's playing board
He's
wipes.
playing no threats.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly. I play nice threats, he has planeswalkers. But anyway, I get him game 1. It's a tight game. Game 2, he gets me with multiple copies of Regal Caracol and an
yeah.
Elspeth Suns Champion.
The kitty
Uh,
cat parade, baby.
yep. And then game 3, I do the classic thing that I always do with black red against blue white. I have no idea if this is correct, but I like it. I like the feel of it. I would have to like actually test this probably through like 100 games or whatever to be confident. But I put him on the play. And for those that watched the last NRG, I did the same thing on Shadow. And the reason I do this against control decks, especially with hand hate spell decks, especially when I have 8 hand hate spells and 3
Yeah.
Lilianas, and I can't remember if I had Go Blanking against him or not. I don't think I did. I could have. There's definitely argument for it, especially if I'm trying to attack his hand like that. But I didn't think it was better than anything I had in my deck. Um, but the reason I do this is I feel like oftentimes the control matchup versus the mid-range decks just comes down to raw cards.
Mhm.
So I just want to be up those resources. I want my Thoughtseizes and Duresses to be more devastating. I want it to be more likely that he misses his lands. There are a lot of reasons I do it, but that
Yeah.
that is why I don't necessarily think those games are typically won on me just like getting a 3-2 and play under a counter spell. Sometimes that does matter, but typically
Sometimes.
that's not going to win me the game. And that's my opinion. That's why I do it. The game is just insanely close. It's another game where I felt like I was pretty behind. But the critical point of this game is he has a Wandering Emperor and a Teferi and a Regal Caracol in play. And then I believe
Seems decent.
two cat tokens, one warrior token, and a shark token in play. So he has just a
Jeez.
nice board, but I also have a nice board. I have a flipped fable that's about to be able to activate. I
Yeah.
think I have a misery shadow. I have a graveyard trespasser, and I think I still have goblin shaman as well. I top deck Blood Tithe Harvester. So the Blood Tithe Harvester, I play the Harvester, I clone the Harvester. The Harvester is able to kill a 4/4 Regal Caracal that he's put a counter
Oof.
on so it can block effectively. And then all he has is a 2/2 and then 3/1/1s. So I'm able to make an all-out attack at the Teferi, which prompts him to block with his entire board, and he loses his entire board. And now he has a Wandering Emperor and a Teferi both at 1 loyalty, and I just have a huge board of creatures, and I have 2 blood as well if I like draw dead cards. So I'm in a pretty good spot. And
Supreme Verdict or bust for him.
Supreme Verdict or bust. He does not find Verdict. He does find an
Well,
Narset. So just
farewell,
like
I guess, too. But
Farewell
yeah,
would do it too. Yeah, any sweeper.
yeah.
Even a 1-for-1 removal spell, like at least he wasn't dead. But it turns out the next turn I have like another really interesting decision. He ends up playing a Narset, minusing a Narset, taking like a Leyline's Binding, I think, or something. I can't remember what he took, but
Well, he was playing the Yorian version, correct?
you're right. Yeah, he
I think he
was.
was.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was. Yep. So he was on Yorion, which is part of the reason the Caracals and all the Planeswalkers are so good. Is not
Yeah.
only do they like get the value the first time, you can flicker them, and then they're insane, right? I mean, if you get to
They're
go
good
Narset
coming
minus,
and going.
yeah, Narset minus Yorion Flicker Narset. I mean, that's a hell of a drug, and I know
Yeah.
George loves Narsetting as much as possible. And honestly, I respect
Yeah,
it.
he does.
It's good. I mean, it's good if
Oh
you
yeah.
have that card in play and I can't pressure it. It's a massive issue. But so I can't remember exactly how his turn plays out, but basically the next turn I have the option to go for lethal, but if he has a removal spell, he doesn't die, and then he keeps to fairy. And um, I can't remember if Narset was still in play at this point, but I end up. Yeah, he did have an Narset. I end up, instead of going for lethal, he's at 12. I end up just sending 2 Graveyard Trespassers at both of the Planeswalkers so he cannot possibly use a removal spell on either one to get both Planeswalkers off the field guaranteed. Because even if he top decks a sweeper, he was at 4 life at this point, and he had tucked a Shieldred with Teferi. That's why it was at 1 those
Hmm.
few turns ago. So I know I have Shieldred coming off the top of my deck the next turn. And so I end up killing those walkers, and then sending the rest at him, which put him to 4. It put him from 12 to 4, and then he's not able to find a verdict anyway, so he does die. But it was a really interesting game, a really fun one. I think,
Definitely sounds like it.
yeah, unfortunate that one was not on camera, because that was certainly my best, most
The,
interesting match of Standard
I
in
feel
that
like they
tournament.
don't. I feel like they don't really like putting control decks on camera much, just because they take so long, unless it's a backup match.
That could
But
be.
well, because you typically want to put decks that are matchups that will be done quick, so you can get your backup match and continue the content train,
You do.
which
I
makes
I
sense. But
honestly, I'm a little disappointed they didn't put us on feature, because like that's a rematch of the last modern, well, the
yeah,
last one I played. That's a rematch of a top
a
4, and
finals.
we're
There's
like
a story there. There's a
there's a
built-in
story
story.
there. I just won the
Yeah.
event the day before, but obviously I had already gotten a good amount of time on camera, so that's probably, they were probably never going to feature me, and I think that makes sense. Like I had already had enough feature time, but
I mean,
that
I don't know. I mean, it's a different format. Obviously, you're playing a
it is.
different deck. I
Yeah.
mean, you're obviously a great player, so like,
Thanks,
I
man.
don't know.
Appreciate that.
I think it would have made sense, but obviously, I'm not running it.
Yeah. I mean, it would have
So
made sense, but I get why they wouldn't do it
yeah,
too.
yeah,
And
yeah.
if I
I see
were in
both sides.
charge, if I were in charge, I maybe wouldn't have put me on either, just because like they could also maybe assume that maybe I'd top 8 again, and then I'll just get more screen time then. So they don't
Yeah,
necessarily need
that's
to put
fair.
me on. They have a lot of other players they're trying to promote. But George is, I think, one of those players. I mean, he's
I
not
think
necessarily
so.
a huge NRG face, but he's definitely. I mean, he's a mainstay on the series, and he's really good. And he's
Yeah.
always playing these pretty unique decks. He just loves control and just always plays control. So, and like, his build was like way different than like every other control deck I've played
Oh
against.
yeah.
I told him after the match, I'm like, yeah, your build seems actually pretty okay into me versus like other control decks. And he's like, yeah, that's the idea. That's why I built it this way. But, um, yeah, so I beat him. It was really tight. And then God, I play against Richard Nixon next round.
Tricky
Yeah, I
dick.
know. On
Uh,
mono blue, and game one is really interesting. I thought sees a Mausoleum Wanderer on turn one. He draws another Mausoleum Wanderer. And he gets ahead of me in this game because he puts a curious, not a curious obsession, the one that the combat research on this creature and starts going to town. And basically, I get in a spot where yet again I'm way behind. He has a rattle chains with a curious obsession and that the Mausoleum Wanderer with the one drop, the combat research. He has 5 cards in hand, and I know 3 of them. None of them counter Shieldred, and I just have to slam a Shieldred and pray that he doesn't
yeah.
have a Geistlight or a Lofty Denial or even a slip out the
Any
back.
of those.
Yeah, anything that like can
God.
interact reasonably with my Shieldred. If he has it, I lose for sure.
I think that deck is the most annoying deck to play against because, like,
It
if
is,
they
but
get ahead, they're putting their foot on your throat and they're not letting up.
so it is a great deck, and I actually in my testing group we are quite confident that blue is actually favored into Rakdos if blue doesn't do anything wrong. So if blue like plays
Yeah.
the game perfectly and makes no mistakes, we're pretty sure that blue is favored into Rakdos. We played like 100 matches before the RC because blue was like a really big consideration for us because we were
Yeah.
confident it was good into green. We were confident it was good into Greasefang. We didn't like our white matchup, which is like the one really scary thing about it. We didn't obviously want to play against like mono red or whatever either, which is
Right.
always a little scary when you go to events like this because like the people that qualify off of just winning like a 8-man random event at their like local store,
Yeah.
if they're not like a great grinder or whatever, that's the kind of player that would be drawn to red, right? So like you might see a little bit of a higher percentage in red at an RC than you would at say even an NRG.
Yeah.
So that was something we were a little concerned about with it. And then, but we ended up not playing it. My group that I was testing with played Rakdos at that one, and unfortunately, I couldn't make it to Atlanta. I was qualified, but I had some health issues going on, which is why I missed the energy for a while. But fortunately, feeling a lot better now, and that's
That's good.
was able to get
It's good
yeah
to hear.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah yeah. But anyway, all this being said, the blue matchup is pretty good into Rakdos, I think, at least slightly favorable. But fortunately, he doesn't have an answer to the Shieldred. He doesn't find one in a timely manner, and I have a Bankbuster in play the whole game too. So I like play Shieldred, crew Bankbuster for you, and then the Shieldred is just like an insane clock because he's taking 2 to his draw step, and he's taking at minimum 2 off the combat research. That one's not a May, but the Curious Obsession is a May. Which
Mhm.
he does utilize at one point of this game. He like doesn't draw a card. Heads up for him. It was wise to check
Yeah.
his
Right.
cards and realize that one's a May and one wasn't. Um, but either way, Shieldred just completely dominates this game. He finds a slip out the back, but it's too late. I'm able to leverage everything and basically get rid of the advantage he had from the combat research and the Curious Obsession because of the Shieldred. Um, and and I'm able to claw back and win that game. So I'm like well behind in that game. Game two, he definitely this is where what I'm talking about. Where like if Mono Blue doesn't make mistakes, they'll win.
Yeah.
He gets greedy in on one turn. I have 2 cards left in hand. I know all but one of his cards, and I just pass turn, and he has 3 open mana. And he's dominating this game with an Ascendant Spirit. He has a 5/6 Ascendant Spirit in play already because it's been leveled up twice, and it has a Curious Obsession, and it's anthemed from the Lord. So it's actually a 6/7,
Hmm.
um, I believe. Anyway, uh, so he end step
Jeez.
flashes in the Rattle Chains, and I respond and I use Rending Volley, and my last card is Power Word Kill. So I Rending Volley the Lord, and he slip out the backs the Lord. There's no reason for him to slip out the back there, and honestly, there was no reason for him to even flash in the Rattle Chains. He had me just dying to the 6/7, and I didn't have enough pressure to like ever beat this. So he just
Right.
honestly, if he just does nothing, I just cannot win this game ever. There's no way. But he just plays cards, and when he plays the slip out the back, I'm able to PWK the 6/7. he loses like all his leverage on the game, and then I'm able to claw back and win that game. That
Yeah.
is never a game I should have won. If if that's a game in my testing group, I lose it every time.
Yeah.
So I got pretty fortunate there. Um, one of many ways I got fortunate on the weekend. Obviously, your opponents making mistakes is another way that you get fortunate in Magic. And
Oh yeah.
that was certainly an example of that. But um, yeah, so I win that round, and then next round is really interesting. So I am at this point 6-1, and there are a lot of um, weird scenarios going on in the tournament. There are definitely it's not going to be a
Tiebreakers are
clean,
all
yeah,
messed up.
not going to
Yeah.
be a clean split at all. It was a pretty large 8. But I'm exhausted. I am really
I
really
could
tired.
imagine.
And at this point,
How many
honestly,
rounds was that through the weekend thus far?
let's see. So modern was 8, and then I was able to
9, 10,
draw. So 8,
11.
9, 10, 11. And then what I had to play 5.
So
So
night.
16 matches so far. Um, and yeah, I'm drained. I haven't eaten yet either. I'm hungry, like
Bless
I
those
so
buys, man. Bless those buys.
bless those buys is right. But I'm also like I'm hungry. I'm tired. All these things. Just definitely feeling some mental exhaustion. I've made a
Oh
couple
yeah.
mistakes on the day. I missed a shield red trigger or two in one of those Grease Fang games. I did start cleaning it up as things went on. I think just kind of being just keep continuing to do it kind of freshen me up. And once you make those mistakes, you're kind of okay.
Yeah.
I got to zone in. I got to be paying even more. I got to focus more on just the mechanics of the game right now. But
It's
um,
muscle memory too, yeah,
exactly
as the
all that,
tournament goes on.
all that. But anyway, I'm pretty confident my breakers are going to be great because I have 2 draws. My loss was to Connor Mullally. I'm pretty confident he can win.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty confident George can win. A lot of my opponents, I'm hopeful they can pull through for me and keep my breakers up, and then obviously add those buys. So I
Yeah.
gamble and I offer my opponent a draw, and he is fine with it. And after we have already decided to draw, we actually both agreed to a prize split too. So if either of us gets screwed out of top 8, we're still going to get good money.
Gotcha.
And I and in spots like that, I like that. I went over and offered it to him, and I in spots like this, I like to try and do that sometimes. It's just like I was worried that he would get screwed by the straw, and I kind of knew that. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to screw him over like that. I mean, but it was possible I didn't make it too, but I was more confident I would make it than him. Well, it just so turns out that the players at table 6 don't intentionally draw. They play their match, but they draw. And the player who was really far behind doesn't scoop. He just
Oh,
does
wow.
not scoop to his opponent, which is really savage, obviously. But it's
Yeah.
even more savage when you kill each other. You both will not top 8 with this draw. You are literally locking
That's
yourself, both of
brutal.
you, out of top 8. So he
Yep.
does not scoop his opponent in top 8, which I was messaging people. I'm like, man, if this was not so good for me right now, this is disgusting, but it's great
Yeah.
for me. So I guess I'll be, I'm happy it happened for me. But
Right.
man, that was brutal, dude. If I were his opponent, I would have been livid. That is really rough. That is really rough,
Yeah.
especially because he was certainly behind. But anyway, um, so this happens, and so just
That is
another just
so brutal.
ridiculous, like super lucky thing that happens for
Yeah.
me on the weekend. This table that should have never drew under any circumstance draws. They both lock themselves out of top 8, and now I am a lock for top 8, even if my breakers are not good enough, which I was pretty confident they would be anyway. But now I'm just locked, so I just know I've top 8 again,
It's a
and
good
I'm
feeling.
like, oh yeah, I'm just like, oh man, thank goodness, right? But
Yeah.
it does turn out where I got the 7th seed, and my opponent I drew it got the 8th. So had they not drawn, he would have not made top 8. So he's the one who really benefited on that draw. But either way, um, that draw happens. Top 8 again. I'm the 7th seed going into this one, so I'm going to be on the draw for most of it. But like I've said, like I said earlier, I don't think Rakdos on the draw is always that bad because a hand hate spell deck gets some amount of
Yep.
bonus for just you are able to attack the hand harder when you're on the draw. So even though obviously I would still like to be on the play in these matchups, there is some amount of benefit to not being on the play when you're playing a hand hate spell deck, especially when you're boarding into 8 of them in some matchups like I was. And 8 of them were in against 2 of my 3 opponents. Round 1, I play against that blue-red Pyromancer deck, and I believe you streamed that today, right? Is
Yeah,
that
I
correct?
did. So we were we were in the process of figuring out the logistics of tonight's episode, and I was actually gonna play your list, but I was like, well, I want to play this Pyromancer deck because that's right up my alley, blue tempo deck, blue that can shift into a control deck.
Yep,
This seems sick, but I was gonna play your list, but we just didn't hammer out all the details. So I was like, well, but I
that's
should
cool,
have
man.
should have probably just played the your
You
list.
know
That
what,
way
man? I think his list is a lot more
it's
interesting than just
so
playing Rakdos.
sick.
Everybody plays Rakdos, right? Ginger plays Rakdos.
Yeah.
It's like we all know Rakdos is good. We all know what Rakdos does. I think the blue red deck for like viewership and interest, like if I were to watch a stream, I would probably be more interested in the blue red deck, to be
Yeah,
honest,
it was
just
sick.
because
It
it's
was
more
sick.
unique. A lot of stuff you maybe haven't seen before. But so I win
Mhm.
game 1. I think I win like fairly handily. I think Shieldred gets in play, and oh yeah, the game. So the game was really interesting. I hold a
Listen,
Misery Shadow until like turn 7. I
of
played
one
a Misery
mind.
Shadow on turn 7 to basically lock a 3-for-1 on my opponent. So I play this Misery Shadow knowing that he has Strangle, Impulse in his hand. He goes End
Jeez.
Step Impulse. I pump it. It doesn't die. He goes Strangle it. I pump it. It doesn't die. And then he goes Impulse it again. It finally does die, but I've gotten all these burn spells out of my opponent's hand. And I think they were like,
Wow.
I think it was like third copy of Fiery Impulse too. And then I end up drawing a Shieldred. So I
That
get
card is
all this
pretty
burn
hard for
out
this
of his
deck to
hand. Just
get rid
all
of.
this stuff that can interact with it is gone. And then I just go boom, Shieldred, go. And know he has a Treasure Cruise in hand too. So just like punishes the cruise so hard.
Yeah.
And he tanks for a bit. He decides to not cruise, and I'm able to just kind of take over the game.
Yeah.
Game 2 is really interesting because I was in a fairly commanding position, but I flood pretty badly, and it's possible I would have to go back and watch this game more closely, but I don't think this one was actually on camera. In fact, I'm like certain it was not because I think they were featuring the 8 versus the 1.
Did
Um,
he get to roast your Shieldred at any point?
I No, I never drew a Shieldred. I don't draw a Shieldred in the
Oh,
whole game, which is pretty unfortunate because I play 3. But basically, I pitch a Fable at one point to Fable because I like just have a plethora of resources, and I don't think I'm going to need the Fable. And then I just don't draw a spell for 5 turns or 6 turns. And also, none of my lands are man lands. So
hmm.
I go from being in this really good spot to he top decks a treasure cruise into a treasure cruise and then
Oof.
puts an outpost siege into play, names cons, and just buries me, which was
Yep.
pretty unfortunate. But
Yeah. Standard
game
all-star, dude. Outpost siege.
yeah, and then game 3 also kind of unfortunate. This one was not on camera because my opponent. I end up making some really interesting lines where I like leave 2 ironclasts in play, so my opponent can not resolve a treasure cruise before I can get a Shieldred down because he has 3 treasure cruises in hand, and then like
Jeez.
is in top deck mode with 2 iconoclasts in play. So I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to kill these. I don't want to fuel his yard. I don't want to let these be castable until Shieldred is in play, especially because he's already shown me he's kind of afraid to cast them when a Shieldred's in play.
Right.
So maybe he'll just like not cast them even though he needs to. Um, and he ends up top decking pretty well. He like chains some spells and ends up getting 5/1/1s into play. I'm able to deal with both the Iconoclasts later. I had the answers, but I chose to just not use them and risk
Right.
him getting some good value because I really wanted to get that Shelly down. So I like get Shelly down, and then he has 5/11s, and then I go push stomp the Iconoclasts, and then I attack him for 4, and he has 5/11s, and I have 1 mana open. I have 2 cards in hand. My opponent looks at me and just goes call and just blocks with all 5. And I go fatal push a 1/1.
Oh, oh my
And it's
god.
like, he was like confident that that block made sense, but it was not. I don't think anybody with knowing that he has
No.
3 cruises in his hand, I am never making that attack if I don't have the push there. There's
And
just
he
no
said that
way.
though? He
He
said,
does. He goes, call,
"Oh
call. I
man."
feel like I'm playing poker. It's like, well,
Right?
we're playing Magic, and I have the fatal push. But you
Jeez.
know, I it was I get it. I get the block, but it's like, man, come on. I'm not. I know what I'm doing at least a little bit. You got to respect. Like that is
You
such a terrible attack.
you
Why
like
would
you
I?
like reveal the full house and you just
Yeah, it's like, bro, come on. Like I top aided. I top aided this event. I won yesterday's event. I'm not a moron. I'm not just gonna send. I'm not just gonna throw
the
away a Shieldred, dude, into
right.
triple treasure cruise. Like it was. If he would have just thought about it a little more, I think he would certainly have come to the conclusion that you should just chump block there. But fortunately for me, he did not. He makes that block,
Right?
and then he does not find an answer to the Shelly, and it ends up taking over the
There's
game.
not honestly, I'm looking at the list and I played it obviously today, but like there's not many outs. So you got Ottawara,
Yep,
Fading Hope, and Roast.
yep. So
That's
he
it.
was, yeah,
That's
and
it.
yeah, and so that happened, and then obviously I play like another threat or whatever, and he just gets buried. So that's how I win the quarters. The semis
I
is
can't get
kind of,
over that call, man. That's
isn't that
hilarious.
funny? I know.
He
I
just
thought
thought
it was.
he thought you were bluffing, maybe, I
I
guess, but
guess, yeah. So you have to like when you're playing Magic, like there are definitely spots where I bluff. Like if you watch the top 8 or the top 8 of Modern, the finals when I'm playing against Sarah, she casts that EI and I like tap 3 mana. I don't have force, but I'm just like tapping 3 mana to make her think maybe I have force and like tank
mhm,
on it, even though I have nothing.
right,
I'm not always the fastest player, as people know, and I usually do tank when I have spells. So sometimes it actually benefits me. Um, that pace can kind of benefit me when I don't have something,
right,
because a lot of people it's kind of easier to bluff it because I don't really
mhm,
play differently based on if I have it or if I don't have it. It's kind of just the
right,
same thing. I'm like always kind of thinking pretty deeply about what's going on. um I don't know if she believed it or not. I think is a pretty easy spot for me to force that there, so she probably didn't buy it.
right,
And it's kind of one of those things too where like we're both in the finals. Like obviously we might do a little bit of bluffing to each other, but like, it's not that hard to call there that I probably don't have it. But either
right.
way, I was just trying to put a little fear in her. But anyway, yeah, in that spot, the attack into the 5/11, like bluffing doesn't
It
do
doesn't
like
make
any. It's so
sense.
bad for me. Like if I attack and he calls and I don't have it, I just like have nothing.
Well,
I have
that's the thing
nothing
is
to play. I'm gonna lose the draw
you
for
gotta
me.
compare your risk to reward
Right,
when you're
exactly. Like
bluffing.
why would I make that risk when I know your hand is triple treasure cruise? Like I'm
Right.
gonna lose to ancestral recall if I choose to just throw away my Shieldred. So yeah, again, I think if he just would have thought about it a little harder,
Yeah.
he would have just chump blocked, and then the game, he at least can maybe make the game go longer. He gets a lot more
Right.
blocks and potentially doesn't die. Um, at least not as quick. The game's more
Right.
instant. Gives himself more outs. Um,
So then what did you play in the semis?
so this one was really interesting. I play against the Atraxa deck, and I actually have not played against the Atraxa deck yet. So it was my
Oh,
first time
that
playing
deck's
against the deck.
wild, man.
Yeah, it's a cool deck. And I've heard whisperings that's been doing really well on MTGO, and
Yep.
um, so I was a little worried just because I had never played the matchup before. But this is where like open deck list was so nice, right? Because
Oh yeah.
I maybe have never played the matchup before, but I just get to see their entire
See
deck.
everything.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just get to see their entire deck. So I can formulate how I want to play the matchup just by looking at their deck list and just knowing how what cards they have that matter, how I want to approach the matchup, things like that. Um, so game one, we both mulled a six. I keep a fine hand, but it's not good. But I didn't really want to mull five. It's possible I should have mulled to five. It was not an exciting hand, but it did have like a pretty good curve. It had excuse me, it had like blood tithe, which could like help filter, obviously. So I ended up keeping it. I ended up getting rocked. I get dominated in game one. It tracks
Mm.
it to the board. I never find an answer to it. My opponent played very well around Liliana, all these things. So they win game one really easy. Game two, uh, I end up Lily edicting them. Lily ends up being huge. They just fall behind Liliana. I end up getting a threat into play. Can't remember which one it was, but I think it was Graveyard Trespasser. And then I also have a Mutavault, and then I have a Liliana going. They concede after like 3 turns of that going on. Playing that deck playing in top deck mode is just almost never beating a Liliana. It's almost impossible. The Liliana can kill all the creatures that they top deck and edict them, and then the plus pressures every single card out of their hand. So um, she's really good. But anyway, so I win game two. Game three is a wild one because um, both our hands are just like all hand hate spells. All hand hate spells, and I think I had a Blood Tithe Harvester. My opponent mulled to six. I think I keep seven. And they go, Thoughtseize you. My hand is land, 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 duress, Thoughtseize, duress, Fable. Or not Fable, Blood Tithe Harvester. They take Blood Tithe Harvester. Oh, what's really funny too, I should say this. You guys can't hear audio on the NRG, but my opponent just goes Lamau when they look at my hand. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Obviously, I see their hand when I thought sees them, and it's just also all hand hate spells. So I'm like, okay, I get what was so funny now. I was a little worried when they said that my duress was going to miss, but I still did lead on the duress. I think. Can't remember. Yeah, I led on the duress because Thoughtseize would really like to hit a creature if it can. They're delve creatures, especially because and at that time I did not have an answer to any of those creatures. So the Thoughtseize is kind of reserved there for one of the delve creatures if I can line that up. Um, so I duress. I take the duress. And another critical thing here is one of my lands is a Mutavault, and then my opponent led on Mana Confluence. So they're already at 17. I leave them with another Thoughtseize in their hand. They go Thoughtseize you, bolt myself again. So they go to 14. Then they play a tap shock land. I ended up drawing a Fable for turn, so they ended up ripping that, which was a little unfortunate, but whatever. I mean, that's the nature of everybody just having hand hate spells. You're just going to lose your draw steps. But basically, I just start whipping my opponent with a Mutavault, and I Dreadbore, a top deck creature, and then yet again, my opponent has a great top deck off the top, but they ran into me and I was just running hotter than the sun all weekend long. So their great top deck, I matched with a great top deck as well off the top. Liliana, the Veil, edict my opponent, fire up Mutavault, kill you. Because I think I had another creature in play at the time. I can't. No, actually, they might have just died to Mutavault. I forget, but um, either way, it was pretty sweet to win that match, and it was kind of funny after the match. My buddy I rode down with, Connor Herbert. He he goes, "Man, that's so awesome! You just won that. Your opponent was talking mad shit in the hall that they were gonna beat you." I'm just like, that's hilarious, dude. But apparently they thought their Rakdos matchup was super favorable. But like I said, I was a pretty hard guy to bet against this weekend, and I don't even agree that that matchup is really that favorable into the Shota build. I think it's really favorable into Ginger's build because Ginger's build is just playing 4 power word kill, which can't kill Atraxa, um, which is awkward. Dreadbore is really good there, and Liliana Edict is also really good there. So I just like, and Liliana Plus too. I mean, Liliana is just like has been so impressive in this deck. Like as well as a lot of other people, like I think at least in my play group, a lot of people kind of talk trash about Liliana for quite a while. Liliana's not playable. Liliana sucks. Can't play Liliana in Rakdos. It's just bad. It's not good
Is
anywhere.
is Liliana not a staple in that deck?
No, Ginger doesn't play it. Ginger does not play Liliana of the
So
Veil.
okay,
Liliana of the Veil.
that's what I thought, because there was people in the comments on the stream that was like, "Really? He's playing Lily? It just seems terrible." And I'm just like, every time I saw you on camera, it seemed like it was doing
It was
worse.
great, and it is just, there are times where I board it out. There are times where it's bad, but it is not
And I
often.
and I was like, am I just a little bit biased, because obviously Liliana's great against
Nope,
control.
nope.
So like,
Shota, if you followed the PT and you respect how great of a player Shota is, which I
yeah,
certainly do, uh,
absolutely.
Shota did not just put Liliana in his deck because he just wanted Liliana because he likes it. I mean, he clearly, that is one of the best players potentially of all time.
Oh, for sure.
And and so if he thinks that something is good and playable and enough to be a 3 of in the 75, I am certainly going to try it. And I
Yeah,
tried it, and it's just really good. It's just
nuts.
good into almost every matchup. There are a few matchups you don't want it. Grease Fang, Mono White. It's not amazing, but I don't know that I would board them out. You can set up good Edict boards,
Yeah.
um, but it's not amazing there, but it's serviceable. I haven't played against Mono White in a while, so I'm not exactly sure how I would board there. But yeah, I mean, Liliana Edict is the truth, man. I mean, Edict in the mirror is great. If you're able to get an Edict, she's already 2-for-1 to your opponent if they're not able to attack her off the board, because you're able to plus it up, and then if you get to Edict again, you're just living the dream. Um,
Heck
but
yeah. Partying
but
like
yeah,
it's
Liliana's been great.
2012, baby.
Yep, exactly. But then Liliana also, like Boggles, obviously it's, or I guess not Boggle, Auras, the green white Auras deck, the
Yeah,
Light Paws
it's
deck
boggles. Yeah.
exists. Yeah, exactly. Exists in this format now. So
Yep.
Liliana just gives you some checks into that matchup too, which
Oh,
I think
yeah.
is really critical because I think that deck's like kind of good. I don't think people respect that deck nearly
I think it's
or
pretty
as much as
good.
they should. I had Benton Madsen on to come play a league with me on our Patreon. One of our Patreon videos, I go through a
Oh,
league with
nice.
Chase Masters and Benton Madsen, and they tested together for that PT. They really have a great understanding of that deck. One of the more fun videos I've ever made. Benton, man, just he also just is such a deep thinker. He thinks a ton about the game. It was really fun to have he and Chase's insights on that deck. They both
Heck yeah.
really just go through and explain, the mulligan process, how good that deck is into open deck lists specifically, why that is. Um, just a lot of cool stuff. But I mean, if you watched the PT and you watched Benton, like it's very obvious he's like a deep thinker because it just always was in the tank. But the nice thing about playing a deck like Green White Auras is like you can afford to tank because your games are only going to go 5 or 6 turns. You can just
Right?
really make sure you do not screw those turns up. And if you do everything right, hopefully you can win
Just
the game.
12-minute rounds.
Exactly, yeah. But anyway, Liliana is just good, I think, and I
Absolutely.
hope that I showcased that in top 8. Liliana was, I did cut Liliana against the Pyromancer deck, obviously,
Well,
because
yeah, I mean, there's
you're not going to keep
obviously
it there, but
matchups
like,
for it, but
but whatever, it was great against the other 2 decks in multiple spots. So
so who'd you play and what deck was it in the finals?
the finals was creativity. And like I said earlier, we had discussion at the beginning, and I just gave this guy the invite. I gave him the technical win. So on Melee, if you ever look at results here, I believe it will show that
Mm,
he won the event, not me, because that is how you get the invite. DreamHack sees who gets first place,
yeah,
and that's who gets the invite. And he was really hoping that I would do it. I could tell he really wanted it. So,
that's
I
awesome.
I gave it over to him. It doesn't do anything for me. I'm not trying to screw people out of their chances to go
You're not
go
gonna
play.
like draw with somebody when you're dead on board, basically, and screw somebody out of a top 8 or
No,
something like that.
it's stupid. It doesn't. I mean, the only it doesn't. Other than give me more NRG points, which, like I said, I got plenty of those this weekend. MVP is like cool, but I'm not gonna screw
Yeah,
somebody to try and get some clout. That's just ridiculous in my opinion. But that's not what I wanted to do. So I gladly did that for him. But we were obviously still going to play to see if I could win both events
oh yeah.
and get that second trophy. And
If you wanna
you know,
talk about clout, we I mean,
yeah,
we
I mean
int
that at the end of the day, right? Like I'm a firm believer, and I've always I want my play, I want my results to get me any
Mhm.
amount of clout that I like. That is what I want. I don't want
Yeah,
to talk. I want to play, and
right.
I want people to respect me and respect my ability based on what I'm doing and how I'm playing. And I don't need to say anything if I'm
I
if
mean,
I'm putting up these kind of results. There's really nothing to say. I don't need to.
speaks for itself.
Yeah. So anyway, we did that. I have really nice draws both games. Certainly better than his were. We put him behind a
Yeah.
Liliana in game one, and he's just kind of never able to get out of it. I draw removal spells at the right time and hold him patiently to not get comboed. I will say game
Mhm.
two was funny. There's a moment where he creativities for two. I have a kill spell, and Dom said this on after the match that, and I actually said this to my opponent when he flipped the Xenagos. I'm like, man, I was not the guy to have to win a 50-50 against this weekend. This is not where you wanted a 50-50. And that's what Dom said too in when, I mean, things just worked out great for me all weekend. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
like winning two tournaments is just, it's
it's
very
insane.
hard, very, very hard, regardless of, how much you're playing or testing or how good you are. Like,
Right.
it's so hard, man. Like there is there are a lot of very solid players at these NRG events.
Oh, yeah.
Um, there's a lot of things that can go wrong on both sides. You can draw bad, your opponent can draw well. Um,
Mhm.
so it just things lined up great for me. He misses on the 50-50 and then doesn't really pose much of a threat after that happens. I have another removal spell to keep me alive through combo again, and he ends up losing. But um, yeah, so that's kind of the run through the Pioneer version.
Absolutely. Well, before we get going, we still do gotta I wanna talk about so this is the Control Freak podcast,
Yep,
and
yep.
I did want to, we talked about, your matchup in Pioneer, but what do you think is the state of Azorius Control, or I guess Bant or Jeskai or whatever you wanna call it, in Modern? Because my thought is it's pretty rough, which is
Well,
why I've been avoiding the format.
I don't think it's certainly not a deck I would play, but if your name's Raja Suleiman, you can still play it. He was in really good position to top eight again. I think he had a really good build, and he was live for top eight until like round seven. I think he picked up his
Yeah,
second loss, and I can't remember if he picked up his third loss. I think he finished 6-3, but I'm not certain. But I think the deck's like fine. If you're a really good control pilot and can navigate through all your stuff really well, like Raja can, like other control expert type players can. Maybe George, I assume, was playing control. I don't know how he finished, but if you are a great control player, I think control is still alive and well in modern. Make
yeah.
sure you're playing at a quick enough pace to win games. You know, make sure you know your stuff because it's definitely not a deck you can really make any mistakes with. You're not going to get any free wins ever
Oh,
with that
yeah.
deck.
Yeah,
Um,
literally ever.
nope. And that's the big upside to a deck like Rhinos, right? Is like some rounds I just got free wins because my
Oh,
deck
yeah.
is just dumb, like inherently. It just does stupid stuff. Round one, I played against elves. Like that was a joke. I mean,
And
that is
just
a
dumpstered on him.
horrid matchup for him. And he did have some cool stuff post board. He was like playing Leyline of Vitality, which for those that don't know, um,
Is that the
is
one that
a
adds mana?
so it's no, that's the you're thinking Leyline of Abundance, I believe.
Oh,
Leyline
yeah,
of
maybe.
Vitality is the old green one that gives
Okay.
+0/+1, and then to all your guys, and then whenever a creature enters, you gain a life. So he did have like kind of a
Oh,
unique like counter to Fury, if you will. He didn't end up having it. He showed it like he showed it to me after the game that they were in his deck or whatever. But
yeah.
yeah, it's just tough, man. In a world of Fury, you need to like at least the mono white deck that's been kind of popping up has that shoal, and that shoal can just be an unreal blowout against
Right?
Fury, right? Somebody furies you, and then you go, "Oh, I'll Fury your face instead," and then
Yeah,
you won't
right?
Fury any of my stuff.
Yep.
Um, which is pretty awesome, actually. I
That
think
card
it's
went from
really
dirt to, like, I don't know what it's worth now, but, like,
that is some cool. Whoever like designed that deck, like major props, because that is a cool deck. I
yeah.
really like the concept and design behind that. But yeah, I think control is fine. But you better be ready to play really hard and really well
I th
because
I think if I were to play Modern, I would probably play either Murktide
yep,
or some kind of Breach.
sure. Yep, and I mean
Um,
those are awesome decks. But yeah, the thing about the breach decks is they're like a lot of them are like similar to Murktide in ways, but they just like do a busted thing, right? Like just another
yeah.
really broken axis that those
And you get to
decks
play
operate
Grape
on.
Shot.
You
I
do, and
love
I
Grape
guess
Shot.
when you really think about it, like Murktide is extremely broken as well. It's a 2 mana
Yeah.
8/8 flyer for God's sake.
It's
That is
nuts.
just so dumb, man. I mean, it's just
Oh, yeah.
ridiculous.
Uh,
This flying Tarmogoyf doubled up, basically. Like Tarmogoyf, typically a 4/5 on average. Like, just
right?
it's so wild how like creatures
Blue
these
has
days
the
are.
biggest, best creature in the format. What is happening?
Yeah, I know. It's just creatures have just become so insane,
Yeah.
especially in the Modern Horizon sets. But
Um, yeah, so that's your thoughts on Modern and how you think, Azorius Control's doing out there, but what about in Pioneer? I think that it is if you know and kinda similar to what you just said, but even more so, if you know what you're doing with a control deck in Pioneer, you can dominate a tournament.
yeah, you can. And
Not just have a shot, but you can just slaughter maybe
I mean,
you
one of them top
maybe
eighted.
you listener can dominate in an NRG weekend if you just crush with control in Pioneer.
Very true. And honestly, like, I mean, one top eighted, and I think
Yeah.
George's list was actually really good, like I was saying earlier. So, before the tournament, before I played against George, I probably would have said, I don't think blue white is very good in Pioneer. And
Yeah.
even though one did top eight, like I think the deck is just not great into Rakdos, which is a huge problem. But I think George's list like has a much better chance, in theory, at least to me, against Rakdos does. So I think if I were to play control, I would go with something like what George was doing. Getting access
With
to Yorion
Yorion?
is
Yeah.
huge. Omen of the Sea is great. Narset's great. Um, Regal Caracal is really sweet too. I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
some nice innovation. That one's not terrible against Liliana. So I know like some lists play like Dream Trawler and stuff, but that one's
Well,
just
and
embarrassing.
the thing with the cats is it puts cardboard on the table, which is what you need against those decks. It
Yep.
doesn't matter how many cards you draw, like it does, but like you need bodies on the board, and that version does it very well.
Rakdos is just so good at killing you, right? I mean,
Yeah, right.
that's like why Rakdos is so ridiculous. It's like this mid-range deck that like can play like an aggro deck because
Mhm.
all of its creatures are just like way above rate.
Oh my god,
Bloodtide
yeah.
Harvester honestly might be one of the most busted two drops we've like ever seen in standard, other than like I guess Snapcaster Mage and Stoneforge for standard at one time. Those were really
Yeah.
good. And there are standards that I didn't play where there are maybe other insane two drops. But like, think about Bloodtide Harvester on rate. It's just like its power is higher than it probably should be. It's a 2 mana 3/2.
Yep.
It gives you a delayed loot which is better than a loot when it enters by a mile because it lets you later in the game when you flood or if you're missing lands, it lets you pitch a card you don't need to find what you need. Blood is just
Yeah.
insanely useful, and it can also be a removal spell. So it's just like
Does it all.
it's almost a
Does it
perfect
all.
card,
Yeah.
honestly. Like what does it not do? It can kill things, it attacks insanely well, and it gives you some amount of manipulation. The card is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
I have no idea how that card's a 3/2, honestly. A 2/2 would have made way more sense, I think. And it still
Yeah.
would have been nuts. It still would absolutely be a 4 of in the deck, even if it were a 2/2, in my opinion. But
Wow.
anyway, um, yeah, what were we on again? So
I don't know. You're talking about Blood Tithe Harvester. You went
I
off on a
know I got
tangent,
into a
man.
tangent about how good Blood Tide Harvester is.
We were talking about Azorius Control, and then
I
Blood Tithe
know, and then I
Harvester got
talked
brought
about
up.
but yeah, we were just talking about how you need the cardboard on the table because the Rakdos deck can just transition so well into this aggro deck
Oh yeah.
because all its cards are above rate.
Yeah.
A Bone Crusher Giant, really big creature. Trespasser, quite a big creature. And then if it's getting triggers, it's dealing 4 damage a turn or more if it flips. And then Shieldred, basically dealing like 6 or more damage a turn and gaining you life. I mean, just like
Yeah.
absurd on rate, these cards. So that's why you just like have to get cards on the table if you're the control deck because the Rakdos deck, because of how efficient these cards are, they don't have to extend into a sweeper ever at all. They can just like put
It's
one,
it's so
maybe two
true.
creatures into play and just 6 you or 7 you every turn. And then the Shota build has Mutavault too, so that could also be beating you up. But
Yep.
yeah, so that's like why the cardboard I think is just so critical.
I definitely agree. All right, so moving into wrapping it up here. Just got a couple last questions. How'd you get into Magic? A short,
So,
brief.
yeah, so yeah, when I was in high school, my dad's friends had like a game night where they would come over and they would hang
That's so
out and
sick.
yeah, so they would come over and play games like board games, card games, whatever. They tried like new games like every week,
Yeah.
which was really fun. And one week they brought over some pre-con Magic decks, and they would usually offer me to if I wanted to play these board games or whatever with them. They knew
Heck
like I
yeah.
was a big game guy. I've always been a huge game guy. I loved like video games growing up and board
Absolutely.
games I'm really into now as well. And honestly, these guys have a lot of to thank. Like that part of my life being into board games is largely thanks to these guys doing this all the time because I wasn't super into board games until they introduced me to them. But um, so they brought over Magic decks and we played and I really enjoyed it. And then they told me that FNMs were a thing and that I could play locally.
Nice.
And then I introduced some of my high school friends to the game. I was like, I think you guys might like this. This is pretty cool and fun. And um, they liked it as well. And then we started going to locals together. And that's how how it all started for me.
And now
Just
you're taking down back-to-back NRGs, like
yeah,
easy
yeah.
peasy. What is your favorite card of all time?
My favorite card of all time. So I know I listed like 5 of them on this list here. I think
Yeah.
if you know me, I am a big Thraben Inspector guy. I love
Great
Thraben
card.
Inspector. So efficient, so good. Good in almost any archetype, good in mid-range, good in aggro. Can even be acceptable in like control flash strategies. Just a
Mhm.
great card. Um, so that one is definitely at the top of my list. Another one I really love is Falconwrath Aristocrat.
Oh, yeah.
That is one of the, and I'll pair these two together: Falconwrath Aristocrat and Hellrider. And the reason
I
I
remember that
honestly, let's
deck.
just do all 3 of these: Falconwrath Aristocrat, Hellrider, and Pyreheart Wolf. And the reason I love these 3 cards so much is when I first started playing like SCGs and 5Ks and like real competitive events that mattered,
Right.
I played this mono red deck in standard that splashed black off of Dragon Skull Summit, Blood Crypt, and Cavern of Souls. And I played Falconwrath Aristocrat in my mono red deck. And the idea behind this was the format at that time was a lot of Unburial Rites Thragtusk stuff.
I remember that.
And so I was main decking Mark of Mutiny, and I had a similar strategy that Claim the Firstborn does to people now, where people would play a Thragtusk and I would Mark of Mutiny their Thragtusk and attack them with their
That's
Thragtusk and Falconwrath, and then I would sack it off to Falconwrath, and I would keep their beast.
that's hot.
Um, so it
That's
was
so
sweet.
dope.
Yeah, man, it was fun, man. And then I had Hellrider and Pyreheart Wolf in this deck too. And the reason I love Pyreheart Wolf is I don't even think Menace was a keyword yet. Pyreheart Wolf,
No,
when
I
it
don't think it
attacked,
was.
yeah, when it attacked, it gave everything Menace. But this is like a set or two before Menace was even a word. So
That's
it was just
wild.
absurdly sweet. It was a 3 mana 1/1, which obviously sucks at rate, but it had Undying, which was pretty good. So you could like suicide attack to like, give everything Menace, and then it would be able
Yeah,
to do it again. It was like pretty relevant. But yeah, so I those 3 cards, love those 3 cards.
that's
They
awesome.
were a huge mainstay in my first ever like deck that I was crushing with. So
Heck yeah. And then so kind of lead into that. What's your favorite deck of all time?
favorite deck of all time. So uh obviously I loved that deck, but I'm a big white mid-range guy, man. So like the deck that Jordan Litsky was playing this week, love that deck. I don't know about 69 cards, but I love the concept of what's going on in that deck. Squadron hawking and then pitching hawk to solitude and then ephemerating solitude is so much value. I love it. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on with that deck. I played Modern Death and Taxes for quite a while. Whenever I just want to
Okay.
kind of mess around, I'll play some Mono White, Modern D&T, and just. But unfortunately, it's just not good enough anymore.
Yeah.
Creatures are just too good. You can like beat some of these piles, but I don't know how you're ever beating an Omnath deck like reasonably with that deck because Thalia doesn't do anything. Legion of Arbor is like okay,
Well,
but Legion of Arbor
all the best spells are creatures now.
I
So
I
like,
know that. Yeah, Fury's disgusting
oh my
against
god,
you.
yeah,
Leonin Arbiter is like cool, but it's a Nombo with Stoneforge Mystic, so I don't even know how you're like supposed to build the deck.
yeah.
It's all a disaster. Aether Vial gets hit by like everything
It's all
now.
just a disaster.
It
I
is,
love
man.
that.
Like
I
Aether
love
Vial
that.
used to be so busted, and now it just gets hit by just a bunch of stuff, even if
Yep.
people aren't even trying. Like
Not
Prismatic Ending
even.
is one of the best removal spells ever. Just like deals with anything, just like
Yep.
doesn't miss a single permanent type. It's so ridiculous how efficient that card is.
For one mana too.
People used
Like
to complain about how bad white removal is, and now it's just like
it's
completely
cracked.
broken. Yeah, it's just
Yep.
went from being like pretty poor to just being completely busted.
Yep.
So, but anyway, yeah, I mean, it's like there are just too many answers to Aether Vial now. You just like can't
Yeah.
reasonably build decks around Aether Vial, in my opinion. Fish is like okay because it beats creativity, I think. It's like there's some argument that you can maybe get away with playing Fish, but I think it's like the only playable Aether Vial deck, and that's only because it just kills people quick and it has like
Right.
some good matchups in the metagame, some like actual real good matchups.
Wow. Interesting. I didn't even. Oh, I first off, I didn't think that deck was even still a blip on the
I mean,
radar, but
it's not a, it's, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that deck is like good, but at least that deck is playable. Like
right, right, right.
that deck, like I could understand somebody's reasoning for registering that deck, registering like a Death and Taxes style deck with like Thalias and or Leonin Arbiters, stuff like that. Like
Right.
I just don't think
Not a
you can
shot.
reasonably yeah, you're putting
All
yourself
right.
in a major handicap.
So death and old school death and taxes before Modern Horizons basically changed the whole form. Modern Horizons 2, sorry, changed the whole format. So last question before we close it out. What are your goals for the rest of 2023 for Magic?
My main goal is just qualify for the Pro Tour again. I've played
Yeah.
on 2 Pro Tours prior. My first Pro Tour I was 19, so it was about 10 years ago. It was quite young. I've gotten much better at Magic since then, and even then, I almost stayed tuned that PT with no testing team and just jamming games on
Nice.
Cockatrice.
Oh
So
man,
that was like I was just at an insane handicap at that, like
oh yeah.
and now, like what thinking about how different
When
things are
teams are
compared to
renting
then.
castles and stuff to test for a week in advance, and you're like
Yeah,
just
I'm just
white
out
knuckling
here
it.
just grinding on my
Yeah.
laptop in second year of college or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like no help from anybody at all. That's not how you want to do it. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Magic is very much you want to find a group of players that that you can play with and that help you get better and that you can bounce ideas off of. That's insanely important. I'm very fortunate that I have a great team, the Swish Gaming out of Grand Rapids, mostly that I play with, and I've got some other guys. Obviously, I play with two that aren't on the team. Raja Suleiman and Max Smith would be two of the really big ones.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and then my second PT was a complete nightmare. I went 0-5. If you look at my elo, my professional record is like 3-10. So my PTs were rough, but both of them, I think I've improved a lot as a player since then, and I really I'm confident in myself that if I get back, I can. I think I at least have potential to make
Yeah.
noise on the PT, and
Well, if
that
if
is
this
my
weekend is any indication, I would definitely agree.
yeah.
Um, so before we head out, is where can people find you on the internet and all that
Yeah,
fun
yeah.
stuff?
So yeah, like I said, I play for The Switch Gaming. We've got a Patreon, The Switch Gaming, patreon.com. You guys can check out
Check them out.
content there. I'm actually going to try and do a write up for both Rhinos and Red Black this week.
Nice.
And I have one going up about standard mono white here in the next few days as well that I wrote last week that somebody who came onto my stream wanted me to write up. If you want to check out the stream, I stream normally every day from 10 a.m. Eastern time to 5 p.m. Eastern um, at the Switch Gaming on Twitch. Um, and typically, right now, I'm playing all standard because I'm really trying to get ready for the
Yeah,
regional championship in San Diego. Obviously, I just want to make sure that I'm using all my time
makes sense.
reasonably. But
Absolutely.
typically, I'm a big Pioneer guy as well. I love
I
Pioneer.
love Pioneer.
It's
Pioneer is
super
so
fun,
fun.
super interesting. You can actually play some amount of brews in Pioneer,
Yeah.
and you kind of can in Modern too. Like if you look at the decks that, for example, Aspiring Spike
Eh,
plays all the time. But the problem with
yeah.
Modern is even when you play brews in Modern, you still are pigeonholed into playing at least 12 cards from Modern Horizons 2.
Right.
So ridiculous. Even
Uh,
even if you're brewing, you just have to play these cards usually,
yep.
which is just kind of annoying in my
It's
opinion.
it's super annoying.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just it's not that interesting. If you read Duke, you can still play old school Jun 5-0 leagues, but
Yeah, right.
you know, um, but yeah, those are the
Oh, that's good.
two spots that you can mainly find me. We also have a team Discord that people could check out as well. It's an open Discord. I haven't been super active in it recently because I've been in a lot of Discords testing with a lot of various groups of people for this
Yeah.
RC. But once things calm down, I'll move back into there. It's a lot more casual of a setting for people who even if you're not a super competitive player or whatever, it's a fun Discord to hang out in. We just we just play games. People playing on Arena, playing brews usually.
Heck
We
yeah.
just come in and chat and have a nice time in the evenings typically. But yeah, so
Awesome.
um, those are the places you
Oh,
can
and you're
find.
on Twitter too? You're on Twitter?
Oh yeah, sorry, you're right. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Follow this man on
I
Twitter. He's so
so
good.
thank goodness that Alex did that for me there because I forgot to plug all of this
Yeah.
when I had
With
my
with
interviews at NRG.
1,000 plus viewers at NRG.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big punt, but at the end of the day, I was telling Alex before this started, it's just not the first thing I'm thinking about is
Yeah.
plugging. But I need to get more conscious of it. But yeah, in the moment, it's so tough because I'm just thinking about those games. It's
Oh,
especially the
especially
modern one.
after
The modern
you
one,
know,
man, was just because I hadn't played modern in 6 months, so I was not
right.
expecting to win that
God,
tournament. I was there to play Pioneer. I was really excited about the Pioneer event. Modern was whatever.
right.
And then, I obviously ran well and won, but yeah, it was just, yeah, my Twitter is Stephen Dykman. Um, just, just, just my name at
Yeah.
Twitter, and then
E easy
uh,
peasy.
yeah, easy peasy. And then my team one is the Swish Gaming. So
Excellent. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the 50th episode of the Control Freak podcast. If you guys want to follow me on all the socials, I'm at Les Alex on Twitter. I just started a Facebook page. That is, you can search up Les Alex, the Control Freak. You can join the Discord, which will be in the show notes in the description below. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. If you want to support the content and the podcast directly, with some $, you can head on over to patreon.com/LesAlex. There are several tiers. There's, several perks and things of that nature. The usual podcast stuff. Or head on over to twitch.tv/LesAlex, where you can subscribe, give me some of those beautiful Bezos bucks, and it is all appreciated. Like I said, join the Discord, and don't forget, head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Give me a 5-star and a short review over there. If you're going to give anything less, though, don't do it. And I want to shout out Hess Retinue, Textures TV, and Jo for your subscriptions tonight, as we were streaming this live on twitch.tv/LesAlex.
That's awesome.
And shout out everybody who's been watching. We've had steady viewership all night, so I appreciate everybody.
That's great.
Episode 51 coming in 2025.
That's good.
No, that's hilarious. I've got some folks that I have in mind for episode 51. Cryptic Rocket is a regular on the channel. That's hilarious.
That is great.
And Stephen, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks, man. I appreciate everybody. I know it was maybe a little longer than most of yours. I can really, really talk about Magic, man.
Dude, it was great.
I love reviewing games and talking about gameplay. Honestly.
Yeah, the fact that you remember some of that stuff is like, I can't remember like the games I played earlier today on stream.
Yeah, that's fair. I love it, man. And there are, sometimes on our stream we do some live feeds of local like RCQs and stuff, and I do commentary sometimes, and I really enjoy that as well. So something you can kind of see if you tune into that channel if you're interested. We do that on the weekend sometimes.
And with that, everyone, thank you. Have a great day or night whenever you're watching or listening to this. Thank you all so much. And until next time, I appreciate everybody, and I will keep spreading that Azorius propaganda. Everybody have a great night.
All right. See you, everybody.